perfect. And just keep her in the frame.
Mixology Matters,
Keep it at that same.
USBG Palm Beaches Education Week. For those of you who are kind of fresh and new to the room, the USBG is the United States Bartenders Guild, basically a community and a network of bartenders around the country and associated with bartenders around the world that come together to build community, education, and do cool things, right? I'm so happy to go after Susan Strong, who used to be my boss, mentor, and basically helped me become the person I am.
Oh, Diana's a rock star.
So when we talk about growing and following your passion and finding the work and putting in the strong, I grew up in California and I went to college and I was like, I'm going to be a teacher because I didn't know what else to do, right? And then I was like, no, I'm going to go into business. And then I'm like, ooh, finance, let's do that. And then I ended up with an internship at Merrill Lynch. And then I went to Merrill Lynch for the first 5 years of my career. I was literally managing money. I was dressing in suits and pantyhose and high heels, and I wore brooches on my jacket and glasses to try to make me look older and smarter. And I realized it was a terrible alignment, no matter how good I was at it. It was a terrible alignment with my values. So I was kind of like, hey, I don't really want to give people a wallet biopsy anymore. I don't want to ask about your retirement. And I had this incredible opportunity to go work for a company called Ketel One Vodka. At the time, we were pretty small. And it was, everybody thought it was absolutely crazy to leave this, financial world to go work for a vodka, right? And I was like, I remember my friend saying, hey, come work with us at Ketel One Vodka. I'm like, vodka? Is that even a real job? That's not a career, right? And it gave me the opportunity to travel. It gave me an opportunity to see the world. And it gave me the opportunity to use the two favorite things in my life, which are people and numbers. So I found my passion doing those things, right? So I spent about 12 years working on Ketel One. I was a brand ambassador for most of that time and also running events. And then I moved on from the brand ambassador world more into the sales side with Terlata, which was mostly spirits. And then now I run a sales team across the Eastern region. I manage 40 different brands, spirits, and wines, and sherries, and a bunch of interesting esoteric things. And I find it challenging and awesome every single day. So it's putting in the work. Putting in the strong.
I'm so proud of you.
Two parts. So today we're going to, I love to talk about sherry, and I know sherry is not the most popular category when it comes to wines, spirits, and things we're using, but it's an important category, and I was trying to figure out how to make it really relevant other than just saying, let's talk about sherry. So we're talking about low ABV cocktails, low proof cocktails, and the idea that it's good for your business and it's good for the trends that we're seeing today, right? So just to give you an idea of what is happening. I think my remote died.
There's another one down there.
Dang, it's not working. Was it working before?
Yeah, it was.
Dang.
I tested it.
I just put those batteries.
And so anyway, so these are some headlines, right? I think we're seeing this trend, right? We're seeing younger people drink less in general. We're seeing people having a healthier mindset. So alcohol is not always their number one way to relax, but they're also looking for ways to, if they are going out and spending time with their friends, to find a way that's not as high octane, right? So it's not Red Bull and vodka in the nightclubs anymore. It's more like Aperol spritz at brunch. So we're seeing those trends. So a couple of ideas, low ABV cocktails. This Bacardi study came from a while ago. It said globally, people are drinking less and more low ABV cocktails, right? We see the trend. What is the most popular brand in the United States right now? Anybody?
Tito.
It comes in a can.
I know.
Seltzers.
What is high noon?
A seltzer.
Vodka and soda
Yeah.
in a can,
Yep.
right? So it's like, hey, that's a spritz, essentially, and it's in a can. So it's easy to access, and people like it because it's low ABV because you can basically drink them all day, right? So a couple of trends, and then even going beyond low ABV is the no ABV trend. So we're seeing a lot of brands pop up that are no alcohol whatsoever. So it's like, hey, you can have whiskey, you can vodka, tequila, cocktails, but there's essentially no ethanol alcohol. So it's a huge trend and the industry is growing. So we'll keep watching that. So when we talk about alcohol by volume, what we're essentially doing is we're saying how much ethanol alcohol is in that product, right? So when we talk about the basic science behind spirits and alcohol in general, so what we're doing is we're taking a raw material, whether it's grapes, grains, potatoes, rice. It could be any raw material that has starch or sugar. We're then going to have that ferment, and fermentation basically creates alcohol, right? So it could be beer level, where it's maybe like 5%, 8% ABV, or it could be more like wine level that could be somewhere between 11 and 14% when you go through a natural fermentation process. And then the process of distillation is basically separating that alcohol from everything else, right? So we're making it higher proof or higher or purified ethanol alcohol. Those are your distilled spirits. So each one has a different level of alcohol. Beer, about 5%, right? We're taking some grains, some hops, putting it all together, turn it into a brew, and then brewing beer, right? 5%. And then malt liquor, whatever, we're skipping that one. Table wine. So table wine, white wines are usually around 11. Some big reds can get up to 14 or 15%. And then fortified wine, which we're going to talk a lot about today, is like sherries or ports or madeiras. These are basically wines that have been fortified or hit with a distilled spirit in order to enhance their alcohol level, to stabilize them, and sometimes age them for a very long time. These are going to range from anywhere from like 15% up to 20%, right? And then cordials, liqueurs, aperitifs. Typically what you're doing is you're taking a distilled spirit, lots of different flavors, and a lot of sugar, and putting it into a bottle. Those are going to have an elevated alcohol level that can be about 24%, sometimes higher. And then your distilled spirits are basically 40%, and your overproof is going to be anything over that. U.S. TTD laws essentially say that all distilled spirits within the categories of vodka, rum, tequila must be a minimum of 40%. So in other countries, you will see lower ABVs. So you'll see some 30s, some 35s versus 40. And the idea here is that obviously if you have a drink that's all whiskey, it's going to be higher proof. If you have a drink that's all wine based, it's going to be lower proof, right? So when we look at, I like to look at this as a little bit of science and a little bit of math and a little bit of fun, right? So if you want to calculate ABV, it basically means the amount of pure ethanol in every 100 mLs, right? And then proof is basically, in the United States, is double ABV level. So if you're 40% alcohol by volume, you're 80 proof, right? And proof came from basically pirates on ships who wanted to make sure that their alcohol was high enough strength so they would light on fire and proof it. Prove to me that you're trading me something of good quality, good high level alcohol. So we can calculate ABV in cocktails. It's a little bit complicated. So we have to take all the ingredients, we have to identify their alcohol by volume levels, and then we basically have to identify the amount of volume in the cocktail. In a perfect cocktail, it's 2-1-1, 2 strong, 1 sweet, 1 sour. Obviously, sweet and sour usually don't have ABVs unless it's a cordial or a liquor or a fortified wine, maybe. So you're really just calculating sweet or strong. This is super complicated. Nobody wants to do this math. There's a total cheater situation. Google. Go online, and there are a bunch of ABV calculators if you're trying to figure out the ABV of a specific cocktail that you've created. A really good one is Epicurious. So what I did is I just kind of threw in a couple of basic cocktails, right? So a Manhattan, right? So we're talking whiskey, vermouth, and bitters. All alcohol levels. They have every single thing in that cocktail has alcohol. It's about 31%. A Negroni, which is also very strong, right? We're talking about gin, Campari, and vermouth. also quite strong at 22.5. A sherry cobbler, which is basically just sherry, some oranges, and some club soda, will get down to like 9%. Because you're taking something that's maybe 15 to 17, you're basically cutting it in half by diluting it. A Tiojito, which is actually the cocktail that you have in front of you, is a low 4.8 ABV. So this is going to be actually about the same as High Noon. No, what's High Noon's ABV? Does anybody know?
Probably 5%.
5, yeah. So when we're talking about different levels of ABV, you basically have your high octane, high ABV cocktails that are going to be very spiritus driven. And then you've got your mid-range, they'll probably have some liqueurs, maybe some fortified wines, maybe a combination of the different categories. And then you have your low ABV, which will generally be, probably 4 to 14%. These could be wine-based cocktails, or these could be just very low, like not allowed spirits, right? Pretty simple. So what we're essentially going to do is we're going to dive into a bunch of different styles of cocktails. So we're going to look at different ingredients, different cocktails, different ideas on how to basically take some of that high octane out of your cocktails and keep the party going. So wine cocktails. Most people don't think about wine, right? As a bartender, you're behind the bar, you've got all this gin and vodka and rum and tequila, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to create today? The first thing you think about is what spirit do I want to use, right? You don't ever think, oh, let me check the wine fridge and see if there's extra Sauvignon Blanc or maybe like some rosé that needs to be used. But it is one of the most important things to do because we want to use up all that wine in those bars. They have a very limited shelf life. So a couple of interesting cocktails. The Calimocho, which is basically red wine and Coca-Cola. This might sound incredibly disgusting to you. I encourage you to try it if you want to get your hands on some Coke today and some red wine. It's actually quite good. There was also I don't know if anybody noticed this trend a while ago. We were talking about champagne and Coke mixed together. Little online trend. Yeah. I think it started, who promoted it? It was like a famous person who was like, this is delicious. I tried it.
Half and half?
It
kind of tastes like a float.
mimosa.
That's what it tastes
You
like.
know, I mean, you're basically like splashing your bubbles with, a bit of like Coca-Cola, right? And it adds sugar, it adds sweetness, it adds a layer of depth, right? Carbonation is always a good thing. So, just kind of a fun one. The Black Velvet, probably nobody has ever heard of this. This is literally taking a stout beer like a Guinness and then combining it with champagne or sparkling wine. Super funky, weird, but comes out quite delicious. So those interesting combos. Rosé.
It was Tom Hanks.
It was Tom Hanks. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that.
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks literally was like posting about champagne and Coca-Cola as a cocktail.
He had a lot of time to spray that island.
It was called
Everybody's palate is different, right? Rosé. I mean, the rosé trend I think has kind of like gone away a little bit. I mean, when was the last time you saw rosé on the menu? Has it been a while? But I mean, that was a big deal. I mean, that's a wine-based cocktail. The idea is that you're creating the flavors of a rosé wine in a frozen cocktail. They need a little bit of extra proof. We all know that frozen cocktails are difficult. They require a little extra sugar and some balance and love. But there was definitely a trend around that, right? And the idea was you could rosé all day, right? New York Sour. This is still a high proof cocktail because it's basically a whiskey sour with a float of red wine on top. But the idea is that red wine can incorporate into cocktails quite easily. And you can take some classics into wine. And then this is actually a really fun cocktail, and I'm glad Susan's favorite cocktail is a Paloma, because this is basically a Paloma, but it's wine-based instead of tequila-based. You can take a super dry Sauvignon Blanc and add a little Aperol just to give it a little layer of kick to it, and then it's grapefruit and lime and club soda. You're good to go. Beautiful, low ABV version of a Paloma. So when we talk about the idea of using wines or fortified wines to basically replace your spirits, this is what helps us get to that lower ABV situation. Some classics. A mint julep. Why not? Use a dry Albarino or white wine, right? Spanish white wine. Or any white wine for that matter, as long as it's very dry, I think would work. Even a sweeter sour you could probably use. Sherry pina colada. Has anybody been to the rooftop at Sparrow? It's one of their top selling cocktails. And it has no distilled spirits in it. It is literally sherry, coconut, pineapple, and lime. So it's delicious. And it's one of their top selling cocktails and one of their most profitable cocktails as well. The sherry sour. We talked about sours a lot. So sours are fun, you know, like whimsical cocktails. They have that feeling of being very sophisticated, but you can change out that base to just about anything. Whether it's a sherry or fortified wine, an amaretto, Midori, whiskey, and then just a couple of other ideas. Like we talked about this morning. Rob was making some Bloody Marys. I said, well, if we want to replace that vodka with Tito Pepe, you could have a sherry Mary. So the idea is using a dry, salty sherry is going to pair very well with that tomato juice and those spices and those, you know, it's going to feel like vodka, but without the extra kick. A sherry Ricky, a wine arita. How many times have you had a wine-based margarita on accident? You don't really do it on purpose. Those are the ones that you have to buy at the grocery store, the pre-mixed ones. But yeah, basically it's a wineria, right? It's the idea is that you're not using tequila, you're using a wine base. Sherry old fashions, champagne cocktails, white wine mojito. I mean, basically what you're having right now is a sherry mojito in a sense, right?
Mojito.
Right? One of the low ABV cocktails that I think is probably one of the most complicated cocktails and most interesting and versatile that a lot of people kind of forget about in the bar world sometimes, unless they just happen to be a Spanish restaurant or a Mexican place, is the wonderful sangria, right? Sangria is basically a wine punch. The idea is that you can take the wines, whether red, white, rosé, sparkling, it really doesn't matter. You can take lots of different fruits, bar fruits, oranges, lemons, limes, apples, pears, berries. You could literally use any style of fruit that you want. And then you're going to use maybe a little bit of brandy, ideally. I say brandy, why? Because brandy is made with grapes, wine is made with grapes. Grapes go together, ideally. But you can also use gin. Some people put triple sec in their brandy. Some people put sherry in their brandy, or in their sangrias. So you have a ton of options here. And it's, I think, probably one of the most profitable and easiest ways to kind of use up all of those products that might potentially spoil in your bar. So, and the riper the fruit, the better your sangria is going to be. The longer it sits, the better it's going to be. Get it in the fridge, keep it cold, serve it up. Balance it out with a little bit of sugar, ideally some Real syrups. Yes, you're welcome, Dean. So obviously your sangria can range probably very widely in ABV levels. A sangria can probably be as low as 7%, but as high as 18%, depending on how hard you hit it with that brand. So it's just a really fun way. So this is a very traditional recipe, and sangria actually obviously was started in Spain. It means blood, right? It refers to sangre, and I thought this was super interesting because I didn't know this until I Googled it. But it actually gained world popularity at the World Fair in New York in 1964. They were serving it at the Spanish Pavilion. Everyone's like, this stuff is awesome, right? And you know, when we go to Spain, we all want to picture a sangria or enjoy our Spanish restaurants. But this is a cocktail that can be enjoyed anywhere, right? It's a patio counter. This is a sparkling version, so a lighter version, perfect for summer, for Florida. Using brandy a little bit, and cava. If you want to try this cava, you can have a bottle open. It's beautiful all-estate grown organic grapes from our estate filler now, just south of Barcelona, made in the true champagne style. So this is my advertisement. This is how we're paying for our seminars. Can you take a picture of me now with this?
Yes.
Oh, no, I just did.
Oh, awesome.
And then everybody hashtag it with.
Well, this is good because it's
Well,
Florida so good.
grayed out the big green bottle in the background.
Okay, good. Thank you. So when we're talking about sparkling, we're talking about spritz, right? Whenever we add anything bubbly, whether it's champagne, prosecco, cava, club soda, tonic, ginger beer, ginger ale, Coca-Cola, basically what you're doing is you're turning that cocktail into a spritz, right? A spritz is basically anything that adds carbonation. So your options are basically endless here. We were talking about bellinis this morning and mimosas, right? Those are your very typical low ABV brunch all day cocktails, right? Wine-based cocktails. People can drink lots of them. They eat more, they stay longer, they have a great time, right? Then they get into espresso martinis and the day just totally turns into Kiroya, Aperol Spritz. I found this cocktail that I thought was super interesting, and I've never tried it, but it's a perfect circle. It's Campari, Tio Pepe, and sparkling. And I was like, that could be awesome. Bitter, salty, nutty, and bubbly. Why not? Right? It'd be pretty pink. A wine spritzer. I mean, it sounds like so, mom's cocktail, right? But if you've ever had a glass of wine and been like, man, this wine is getting warm, if you add some ice, a splash of club soda, it just completely rejuvenates it. It makes it even more crushable, right? So you can spritz all sorts of wines, white, red, rosé, all day. Port is also very spritzable, which is interesting because I think people don't think about that. They think of port as very much like after dinner, sweet style fortified wine. If you take like a white port or a young, like LBD, easy to spritz. Add some club soda, lightens it up, makes it really, really enjoyable. How many people have seen a Hugo spritz on the menu lately? Yeah, it's a thing. I saw it in Ireland actually a couple weeks ago for Pete and Emma's wedding. It was at the Shelbourne, which is a beautiful hotel in Dublin. And I was like, I want a spritz, but I don't want an Aperol spritz. And he's like, how about you?
What's in it?
All right, let's do it. So a lot of fun.
What is the Hugo spritz? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's basically a elderflower spritz. So it'll usually have like a little bit of extra garnish. But yeah, it's essentially Saint Germain, champagne, and herbs to garnish, right? A vermouth spritz. I think my first I always thought vermouth was disgusting, right? Because it's probably been left on the back bar, open for decades, for dry martinis where you're like just waiting for the vermouth to buy, right? Just give me all vodka, give me all gin. But really quality vermouths that are taken care of are delicious. So you have the opportunity to, one, keep them in the refrigerator after they're open. Any wine should go in the refrigerator after it's open because it becomes oxidated, right? And it eventually turns into vinegar and not pleasant. So with vermouths, though, dry, sweet, you have a lot of options here. You can easily spritz those. It lightens up the texture, it makes it nice and bubbly and refreshing, and something you can pound on the patio. Sherry, of course, and Americanos, and Negroni Spaghetti. Right? So this is the cocktail that you're having essentially. It's a Grey Bujico is what it's called in Spain. We call it Tio Hito, of course, because we're branding it with Tio Pepe. So Tio Pepe is basically our namesake brand for Gonzalez Byass. We started producing sherries 5 generations ago in 1835. We own lands all around the Jerez de la Frontera sherry triangle, where we're growing Palomino grapes and Pedro Jimenez grapes, right? Both are white varietals. This is a very interesting place. Has anybody been to southern Spain and to sherry? Like it's incredible. I mean the landscape is dry and windy and sometimes humid depending on which way the winds are coming from, whether they're coming from the Mediterranean or if they're coming in from the Atlantic. It's right there on the coast of Gibraltar, so we're very close to basically the border of Africa. So it can be extremely warm, windy, and then there is this very special soil there called albarizo soil, which is this white, chalky clay soil. And what it does is it, one, it reflects the light, and two, it actually absorbs all the water. In the sherry world, you're not actually allowed to water your grapes. So your up to Mother Nature in order to maintain that. And because of the unique environment, you also have a magical thing that happens in the sherry world. So essentially you take your grapes, harvest them, ferment them into wine. The wine's about 11%. You're gonna fortify it with some brandy up to 15%. And then you're gonna put it into a big sherry butt, which is 600-liter cask. And that cask is part of the Solera system. Yes.
Are they making their brandy?
Huh?
Do they make their brandy as well?
Do we make brandy?
Their brandy? Yeah, for that.
Yeah, we make brandy. The brandy that we make in house is called Lepanto. It's very high end. But yeah, so sherry, Fino sherry as a style is extremely dry. Most people think sherry is going to be sweet or very dry and nutty, which it can be. There's a rainbow of sherry styles. So anyway, Fino. Basically what happens is you put it into a cask, there's a layer of yeast that grows, it's called the floor. It protects the wine from being oxidated, even though we're leaving 100 gallons of that cask open. So there's oxygen exposure, but there's a layer of yeast that protects it. Hence being called Fino or pale sherry, right? So this is gonna be extremely dry, aged for 4 years in a Solera system, protected by this layer of yeast. So it's very yeasty, bready, nutty, has an incredible amount of salinity to it, and it literally has less than 1 gram of sugar per liter. So it is the driest, strongest white wine you will ever try. If you've never tried Tio Pepe by itself, I have bottles open over here. Feel free to come over and taste. Go open it, Alex. I love it. Order del Vermouth, we talked about this a little bit. So, easy to spritz a vermouth. This is the vermouth that we make in-house. It's basically sherry-based. So it's a blend of Oloroso, which is an oxidized Palomino wine, and then Pedro Jimenez, which is the sweeter style wine that comes from grapes that have been turned into raisins, essentially, before we vinify it. So vermouth. Very forgotten, but very beautiful category. Vermouth is basically a wine that has been fortified and aromatized, right? So we're adding botanicals. And typically those botanicals are bitter to start, hence the word vermouth comes from the word, from wormwood, right? Vermouth. And it's usually wormwood, gentian, it could be, different types of aromatics, citrus, orange, lemon, fruits, cloves, spices. For our recipes for Gonzalez Byass, the copa, we do an extra secco, which is very dry, based with Tio Pepe, and we do the copa rojo, which is a cream sherry, so a blend of Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez, and we use the exact same botanical recipes. So gentian, wormwood, cinnamon, clove, orange, and the rest are all big secret. I'm still trying to find the recipe every time I go. But it's delicious stuff. So, and if you look at cocktails, vermouth is important for what? Martinis, Manhattans, Negronis, what else?
Friday night, Saturday night.
Yeah, exactly. But there are some cocktails where you see vermouth taking the lead, like the chrysanthemum, right? So the idea is that sometimes there's brandy in here and it would be a lesser ingredient. The vermouth is it's not the modifier, it's the star of the show. So you can easily reduce ABV on a classic cocktail, like a Manhattan or a martini, by reversing it. So taking the big spirit, the strong, and turning it into a secondary spirit, bringing that secondary spirit to the higher volume level. Will reduce the ABVs. Cool, right? Fun. Two of my favorite classic sherry cocktails. I mean, these cocktails were built to be sherry and sherry-based. They were not meant to be like something else. It's the bamboo and the Adonis. Essentially, this is the martini and the Manhattan of the sherry world. So a bamboo is going to be a very dry cocktail. It's going to be made with either Fino or Amontillado, which are your driest style sherries, and then dry vermouth, and then orange bitters, and sometimes aromatic bitters too if you want to add, which I think is nice. But traditionally garnished with either an olive or a lemon twist. But it's basically like having a martini without being like, how many martinis can you have before you fall down, right? It's like the joke, right? No. Martinis are like women's breasts. One's not enough. 3 is too many.
Disagree. All right.
And then the Adonis. I mean, what a beautiful name. But this is basically the Manhattan of the sherry world. So we'll typically start with an Oloroso style sherry, or you could use a nice blended sherry as well, with some sweet vermouth and some aromatic bitters. And that's going to give you your Manhattan of the sherry world. Some other classic sherry cocktails that I think deserve some attention. The sherry cobbler. This is probably like the sangria of sherry cocktails in the sense that you could replace this fruit with just about anything. You can really have some fun with this. The idea is that you're taking sherry, you're taking some sugar, some fruit, and some club soda, and you're pouring it over crushed ice, and you get a fantastic cocktail. Classic is to use sherry, oranges, and soda, and a little bit of sugar, maybe, depending on the style of sherry that you're using. But I've seen this done with pineapple. I've seen this done with berries. I've seen it done with just about every style of fruit, and it's really, really quite delicious. Are you pouring Tío Pepe for everybody?
You see it?
Yeah.
Love it.
So, Tío Pepe is one of those things. People either love it or hate it, or they grow to love it. So, it's because it can be very jolting at first, because it is so dry.
I have a question.
Yes.
For the competition that you've hosted, you've done it twice, right?
The competition that I hosted years ago,
Yeah, you've done it once or twice?
I've done it, well, the Tío Pepe is an international cocktail challenge. The honest truth is we don't have enough money to fund it in the United States because we don't buy enough sherry here. If you drink more sherry, I'll bring more competitions.
I'm just curious, which style of sherry did you notice people using more?
People tend to lend to Tío Pepe for cocktails if they're going on the dry side and Pedro Jimenez. I mean, it's kind of like they either choose the driest or the sweetest, and in between is the hardest part to figure out, right?
Gotcha.
I didn't want to do a full sherry seminar, but if you want to learn more about sherry, I will be hosting a sherry class at Sweet School at Sweet Liberty on October the 30th. And we will be doing literally Sherry 101. We'll start with Fino, and we'll work our way down the rainbow of sherries to Pedro Jimenez, and then we'll have some fun with a couple of blends and some cocktails and things like that. So we'll be taking good care of you as we prepare for international
Sherry and charcuterie.
Sherry and
Never
charcuterie.
did.
You want to do the charcuterie?
We've talked about it for 3 years, but all
I love
right.
it. I mean, if you want to host it,
Yeah.
I'll
do it. Sure.
You buy the charcuterie, I'll bring the sherry. So this I thought was interesting because we don't really see this in the United States at all, but we were talking about martinis, right? We were talking about ready-to-drink cocktails, canned cocktails, bottled cocktails. If you go to Europe and mostly in Spain, you will actually find sherry-based cocktails. So prop twist is essentially the exact same thing that you have in your glass, but in a bottle or a can format. And then there's Padrino, which is basically sherry spritzes with different styles of sherries in them. So it's kind of a fun, interesting way to enjoy sherry in a less, I'm drinking Harvey's out of a little glass after dinner way, right? So having some fun with that. The coronation cocktail. I love this cocktail. It's basically a martini with a little maraschino liqueur. This was in the Savoy cocktail book. It's incredibly delicious, but it's also low ABV, and it's something that can be enjoyed. So, any thoughts on cocktails? Any questions before we move to the really awful, boring part called peppers? Good? Everybody enjoying their Rey Bonito? And their Tío Pepe? All right, so keep the profits flowing. Why is this relevant? Why are low ABV cocktails relevant? One, you can use great ingredients. You don't have to, spend $40, $50 on a spirit cocktail, right, or spirit bottle. These are actually pretty accurate bottle costs on here. So the first step in costing your cocktails is to know how much your ingredients cost, right? I might have made some incredible assumptions on fruit, soda, and things like that because I don't buy from a bar. I'm assuming the more limes you buy, the cheaper they become, right? But so cost here, and the idea is that if you keep it mid to low ABV, people will probably stay longer. They'll order another drink. They'll stay, they'll order some food. Most low ABV cocktails are considered an aperitivo. So they're going to stimulate the appetite and encourage people to order another appetizer, another top-up, right? And that means they're going to stay longer, their check's going to get bigger, your tips are going to get bigger, and at the end of the day, they're not going to cause any problems, ideally, if they don't drink too many mimosas and bar. So, a couple of just kind of cost calculations here. I do have the sangria recipe costed out. The idea of, brandy, you're making a pitcher here, right? So you're taking 4 ounces of brandy. You're combining it with a bottle of wine. Yes.
Can you just come back kindly to the previous one?
Would you like me to send you a price sheet?
I would love it.
You can also visit SGWS Proof for all the pricing on my portfolio. Got it? It's proprietary information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love you.
So a sangria recipe, right? So let's say we're making a pitcher of sangria. We're going to start with a 750 ml bottle of red Tempranillo wine. We're going to add 4 ounces of brandy. We're going to add some finest call simple syrup. I love to use real syrups in my sangrias because you can really have a lot of fun with flavors. You can have tropical flavors like mango or passion fruit. I think they really lend very well to it. You can even use agave. So you can really play with the sugar component within sangria, and real is a great partner for that. I love having the real syrups in it. And then basically your fruit, right? So you're going to chop up some lemons, some limes, some oranges, lots of citrus, maybe some apples, and then you're going to look in your fridge and see what else you have, whether it's some berries, some peaches, stone fruit are fantastic. And then you could add some spices and herbs. I think a cinnamon stick is sometimes very traditional. I think it overpowers unless it's red, and it really goes with the flavors that you're doing, but it's up to you. And then soda. You can use club soda, you can use lemon lime soda, you can use orange soda. I was making sangria. I studied in Spain when I was in college, and we were literally in the basement making a bucket of sangria. And they started bringing out these 2-liter bottles or 3-liter bottles of soda, the big ones, right? And I was like, orange soda? Really? It was fantastic. So,
Sherry Coquito.
yeah.
Gotcha.
And then, essentially this is going to make a big pitcher of sangria. It's going to be a big batch. They're going to put in the fridge. It's probably going to serve, if you look at the serving size of being about 6 ounces, once you pour it over ice and garnish it with a bunch of fruit, you're going to get 10 servings out of that. Average cost is $1.64. You're probably charging more than $7. I felt that was actually quite cheap. I was thinking about happy hour pricing. And you're making $5, almost an 80% margin there. So pretty impressive. And then same thing with the Tito. Basically we're talking about $2 to make a serving of this. You can easily sell it for 10. Especially if you serve it in a beautiful wine glass with lots of mint and limes for garnish and a pretty paper straw with stripes on, right? Just like the stripes. A mimosa. Even most places use much less expensive sparkling than this, so we know that the cost would be much lower. My orange juice is obviously very expensive. 60 cents sounds probably pretty high. What's the cost of an ounce of ripe? Where's Jason?
Jason will be here shortly. He's dropping his kids off.
Yeah. So, the cost of a mimosa can be minuscule, but you can also elevate it and use actually good ingredients and still make lots of money. The bamboo and the Adonis, I priced them out for you as well. They come in around $2, and we sell it for 10 on the low side, but if you're in Miami, it'd probably be at $18 top, right?
tip.
Plus tip, plus tip. So I want to kind of close on a few sherry notes. I do have some Harvey's samples for you. I have half bottles of Harvey's that you can take home with you today. For those of you who are not familiar with Harvey's, Harvey's is the #1 selling sherry in the world. And it is a cream sherry. The blue is a cream sherry. And when we call something a cream sherry, it doesn't mean that there's milk in there. It's not like Bailey's, right? Where we're taking a spirit and blending it with cream. Cream sherry essentially means that there is a portion of the sherry that's blended in that is sweet. And this came from the Harvey's brothers, actually, right? So John and Eddie Harvey, they were blending sherries in Bristol, UK. At that time, sherry was shipped in casks, right? So these huge casks were coming to them, and they were blending Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez. And they marketed it as Bristol milk, Harvey's Bristol milk, right? Because milk was safer to drink than water at the time. And then they started getting a bunch of different styles of sherry. They got some Finos, some Amontillado, some Olorosos, some Pedro Jimenez. They blended over 30 different sherries together, and they tasted this lady on it. She was very aristocratic. She was very fancy. And she said, well, if that is milk, then this is cream. And that has literally established cream as a style of sherry since the early 1900s. And sherry hit its peak sales in the 1950s. And so Harvey's has been a little bit rebranded and updated. If you get your bottle cold, the Harvey's label will actually turn colors, like the Coors Light Rocky Mountains, which is fun. It's thermochromatic. But this is a really approachable way to use sherry in a lot of different ways. It's a little bit sweet, it's a little bit dry. It's a blend of 85% dry sherries, including Fino, Amontillado styles, Oloroso styles, maybe some Palo Cortado in there. And then it's taking about 15% of it is going to be Pedro Jimenez, the sweeter style. And then I do have some medium dry here today too. The medium dry is essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's a drier style blend. I like to say Harvey's is the Johnny Walker of sherry, right? So you're taking all of these polarizing flavors and bringing them together into something that's really enjoyable for everybody. So this is going to be a lighter style, mostly Fino, mostly Amontillado, a little bit of Oloroso and Palo Cortado with just about 8% Pedro Jimenez, just to give a light sweetness. So these are very approachable ways to make sherry cobblers. They're very affordable as well. And then you have just some fun opportunities to work with sherries and make some low ABV cocktails to keep the party going and the profits flowing. That is me. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to follow me on social. Give me a shout on email, or if you desire my phone number. I like phone calls actually. I'm a big fan of taking phone calls. I like to talk to people instead of text. And then feel free to follow Gonzalez Byass USA to see what we're doing with all of our wonderful sherries, fortified wines, spirits, and all of our new stuff too. We just brought in 14 new brands since the